Is there any good reason to practice taking tests? There's at least one. There are a lot of posters out there and they say a lot of things, but one of them is actually really true. Everyone's heard the phrase in one ear and out the other. It's the same thing as I hear and I forget. Anyone who's ever been in a classroom knows about this. Brains usually work in pictures better than they do in words. It isn't a coincidence that our earliest written languages were in pictures and not in text. It was pretty important for our ancestors to remember the things they had to defend themselves against, and they remembered that better if they saw it. There wasn't as much use for text. But when you want to really be good at something, you have to go out and do it. Think of all the things that people have ever gotten good at: painting, dancing, basketball, running, skateboarding, piano, math. And anyone who ever got good at those things had to get in there and do it. If you had the job of teaching a Martian to ride a bike, how much progress would you make by telling him how it's done? You might start by saying, take hold of the handlebars, put your foot on the pedals, get your balance, then get the wheels rolling. And as long as the wheels keep rolling, it will be easy. Let him see a bicycle and he'll have some context. But seeing a bike is not the same thing as knowing how to ride one. If you want to understand how to ride a bike, you have to get on one and do it. Practicing tests doesn't mean relearning what you learned in school. It's more like learning about the tricks and traps that test makers love to put in there. Know the traps before test day, and they can't trap you. Practicing tests means learning how to take a test. And practice helps on every section. For example, you probably have a vocabulary that works just fine in school or the everyday world, but on your test you won't always see the same words you ordinarily use. Test makers love to throw in words that would give Shakespeare's brain a workout. And you have the verbal skills to complete a sentence. You do it pretty frequently. But the tests have come up with ways to turn what you do all day long without thinking about it into a jungle of traps. You probably know enough math from school to be able to answer every question on the test. It isn't really the math that's hard. It's what they do with the questions. Yes, I am longing to share the lot of beautiful Daisy Bell. And on most tests, you have less than a minute to finish a math problem. The two types of people who would be most likely to pick up this point are the 100% of us who are born great test takers, and the ones who practice test taking and are used to dealing with this kind of stuff. Even good readers are surprised when they see a reading comprehension section for the first time. That's because reading comprehension tests don't test how well you read. They test how well you take a reading comprehension test. And that's the real reason to practice for a test. On the day of the real test, you don't want to show up like the nervous, inexperienced rookie who has no idea what's coming. You want to be the grizzled old veteran who's seen every trick, curve, and bump on the road 100 times before. Every year in Baja California, a bunch of racers get together and compete on an off-road track that's about 1,000 miles long. The course changes every year, so any driver who hasn't driven it before doesn't have much of an idea what to expect. Some of the drivers there don't take the race seriously. They're just there for the fun of it and show up at the starting line on the day of the race. Maybe they finish, maybe they don't. But the drivers who are serious about the race are down there several days early and drive the entire track before the day of the race. They're there to get an early look at all the bumps, curves, and tricks on the course. And it's always the ones who practice the course who get the best times. That's not a coincidence. And one of the great things about practicing tests is that you don't just get better at the test you're practicing for. You become a better test taker. It's a skill that you won't lose when it comes time to take future tests. sort of like riding a bicycle.